This started by talking to Waddy Norman, the photographer in Winton. He's very, very keen on photography, and I happened to be telling him that we were going to be floating tanks across Lake Wakatipu to Walter Peak. And he suggested to me that, why don't you film it, Tom? And I said, well, what a good idea. I said, would you be happy to do it? And he said, yes, absolutely. So the arrangements were made, and in due time, it all happened, which was rather marvellous to me anyway, because we're used to doing shifting tanks and do it all the time, and to float them across the lake, it was quite a new thing. But we did know that they would float, as they had come up out of water holes and all that sort of thing that put them down in it, but they float up the top, which wasn't too good. And they'll float in a bit over 2 foot of water, a 6.5 to 7 tonne, but they've only got to displace that in water to lift them up out the ground, and that's what happened. So here we are on the first trip up to Walter Peak, coming up through the main street in Winton. These old trucks as they were then. Bit of a laugh, but however they did a very, very good job for us. That's the main street of Winton there.
What sort of year would this be, teacher?
This is 1968. It would have been about February, March, thereabouts. And of course we waited for a decent weather report, and was to do it in fine weather, because it wouldn't have been very nice to do in rotten weather. And I'd made an arrangement with Ray Tomkes, the launch owner, the tourist launch that he had there, to do the pulling for us. And that was no problem at all. So here we are, out through the village.
So who's driving the trucks?
My brother and I, Dave, and myself, we did all the tank deliveries down there. I think the one with the exhaust sticking out the side, that was me. But that's the other ones. That was what they would call then in those days 7-tonners. But they pulled well, or they had to, with us behind the wheel.
So the trucks, what sort of breed of truck are these?
Oh, they were BMC, Morris and Austin, over the Josephville Hill just south of Lumsden. We didn't seem to have a pilot in those days, so we just let boldness be my friend and carried on without the pilot.
Quite different. Health and safety is a bit different nowadays, isn't it?
Yes, we hadn't heard of OSH yet. This is a cobber here from Winton. He actually pulled the boat. My foreman, actually, Don, owned the boat, and he sort of came up with us to help, you might say, in the lake. Here we are going through Lumsden village, and nobody there to stop us or pull us up or weigh us up. We were never ever weighed up, because I think all the cops in Southland, you know, here these guys from Winton, let them go, they won't harm us. That was me in that particular truck. One had the exhaust going out the side at the top. On the front there, you'll see we've got mirrors on the bumper, and we can see right behind us, right underneath the tanks. It's quite important with people coming behind and to try and go past. They're a bit scared, so if we should just keep an eye on those people and pull over. You see a wide spot, pull over and let them go, which was most convenient. You usually got a toot or a wave. This is up round the lake. This was quite a interesting spot to meet people.
What they call it, Devil's Staircase.
That's the Devil's Staircase. There, it's up past there's a little one-way bridge in those days. This is up and over around through the back of that now. That was Don DeRose. He's a very good friend of mine. Also, as it happened, he was my best man, believe it or not. But he shifted down to the South Island with us when we shifted down in 1958. Don came with us, and he spent over 30 years on my staff, and was my foreman for many years. Grand chap, Don, and since retired, of course, and lives in Fielding. That's around the staircase and heading on up the lake. The vehicles behind us belong to us, so hello, that's myself, it is. Oh, quite a young man, ha ha.
So how many tanks do you think you built over the years?
Well, I think around about 17,000. Quite an effort. But see, we're taking out many a day. You know, it takes about 3 or 4 days sometimes. And we were there, in actual fact, in a big way, in 1958 we got going, and had a steady staff of 12 to 14 men most of the time. It was quite a big business, and quite a good business as well. And we were kept very busy the whole jolly time. That's the bridge across the outlet of the Lake Wakatipu. That's a terrible place now. They're since building a new bridge further downstream to what that is. But that was a very tight fit. As you can see, there wasn't much between the outside edge of the tank and the bridge rail. We stopped around there where they put the boats into the lake. That was the place. That was our local plumber. In those days, people used to smoke. So we had to back down into the water where they launched their boats. So we put the skids down there like that, put a jack underneath and jack the tank up and put a roller underneath the tank. Let it down, put the hoist up. Now he's a hanger-on, he's just a visitor, that guy. Up with the hoist, and just at the end of the deck we had swinging feet that went down onto the ground to stop the hoist from going up on its own with all that weight at the very back.
People must have been thinking, what on earth are these people doing? Because this is obviously the first time you've ever done this.
No, we'd taken over the tank on its own once before, and we knew how they would perform in the water. That's Don.
But they must have been watching you, thinking that this was going to sink these things.
Oh yes, people went up there to see them sink, which is rather marvellous. Pardon me. And a lady walked along that jetty there, and she about level with the roof of the tank, and she gave it a bit of a tap, and she said, "These things are made of concrete, sir." And I said, "Yes, madam." I said, "The Queen Mary was made of steel, 84,000 tonne." I said, "and it doesn't sink." It's a bit of a laugh. But however, as we unloaded them, we just joined them together with a wire rope strap. There was a wire rope strap right round the bottom of each tank with an eye, and we hooked on there with another short strap between them. And there we were quite happy to see them get pulled out into the water and no accidents.
Looks like a bit of a roll-on too.
Yeah, actually the boat rolled more than the tanks.
So did you need to put any ballast or water in the tank to stop it from tipping or anything like that?
No, I went prepared for that, but I took quite a few bags, empty sacks, in case I had to fill up them and put them in the tank to give it a bit of ballast, but there was no need for that at all. So we were fairly pleased with that.
So why did you choose Winton, of all places, to start a business in Southland?
Well, we came across a huge, big factory, the old linen flax factory. That was by accident, and it had 2 homes, 2 cottages there for us. This was another job we did down at the big motels they built. And
That's Queenstown, is it?
That's Franklin Arm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that was on the way round to Arrowtown, I think. Some of these shots that are in the film are extras, you might say.
So you found the flax mill, or the old flax mill in Winton?
Yes, and it was empty and for sale. But in the two houses, they were being rented by the Linen Flax Company, which was their main headquarters in those days, was at Geraldine. So from then on, we found out who had this place for sale. J.G. Ward's in those days. So we said, right, let's get onto this fella. And we had a good yarn. And we said, well, what do you want for it? And he said, oh, £3,000. I said, oh, that's all right. So who else do we see? So they told us the chaps to get in touch with in Geraldine. And so we did. We got back to Geraldine and found these fellows. There's some local Winton blokes. And there's Ray Tompkins on the right-hand side there. And anyway, we got onto them and said, well, right, what do you want for this? And they said, £3,000. He said, all right, well, we haven't got £3,000, but will you rent it to us? And I said, oh, yeah. What will it charge? He said, oh, £1 a week would be too much. And we said, no, I reckon we could find £1 a week. So we shifted. We back up to a little district we called Ongarti, north of Hunterville, where we were born and raised, and cleaned up the work that we had on hand. Headed south, which was rather a terrific experience. The second time we went in there, we couldn't take the trucks or the tanks across there. You'd wrecked all the gear, plus the trucks, and probably tipped the blooming things over. There was no road except tracks like this. So at that stage we had a farm over on the coast and had our own D4 dozer and the blade. So we said, right, we'll take the crawler in, put it on one truck, put the blade on the other, and head in. So this is what we did.
So when you say head in from where?
We headed in from the Mavora Lakes.
Ah.
You turn to the right on the way to Te Anau and head into the right at Mavora Lakes and up through there. It's all pretty exciting.
So this was the idea, was that once you got the tanks across the lake, you would then meet them at the other side, and you'd be pulling them out with the dozers.
But okay. And I had to push him up the track. Whoops, that was a bit steep hole. But and going halfway up this track, it was not good. It was pretty shitty in places.
So is there a road there now, or was this?
Yeah, there's a bus highway. The buses go in there now, believe it or not. And then there was no hope of putting a bus through there. You would have never ever got there. Like we only got there. Well, at one stage here, you'll see a little bit further on, because I got bogged and Dave was in front of me, because both those trucks had beautiful winch gear on them, and he pulled me out, pulled me through this bad patch. So it was just overland, you might say, and we had been told about this track by a chap, John Squires. He worked in Hazes in Invercargill, and him and his clubbers used to go up there and spend their holidays there shooting and fishing, which was a very valuable information that we got for nothing, you might say. And of course John was most interested in what we were doing, and very interested to know what we had done afterwards.
That looks pretty steep there.
It was very, very steep, and here we go. This is some of the fun we had. And this is Dave. Oops, he missed with his foot. Lean on it. So here he got through, because he only had about the weight of the bulldozer blade on his truck, which gave him enough there to hook on and pull me, or drag me, one or the other, with the winch. But old D4 showed a wonderful machine, and just the most handiest thing to have up there.
So you can imagine if you had another 7-ton tank on the back, you just wouldn't have been able to get through this track.
No, you wouldn't have had a show in hell. It'd have been too dangerous. You'd wrecked your gear, tipped it off, or did something, and probably wrecked the truck as well. Well, we didn't want that sort of carry on. So, but we can do this, because we could put the hoist up and drive the tractor off quite easily, and put the blade on if necessary, and just shove them through.
So how long did you rent the land and the buildings in Winton for? Were you waiting until such time as you got a cash that you could actually purchase the building? So when did you purchase the building?
Oh, well, this is rather funny. We got to know these chaps pretty jolly well, and they could see then that we weren't there just for fun. And they got their £1 a week quite easily, and so I said, well, what would you sell this place for? And we'd been in it for 12 months. And they said, oh, look, well, you can have it for £2,000 now if you like. So Dave and I looked at one another and we said, well, that's £1,000 cheaper than what the original quote was. So we thought, right, look, yeah, we'll take it. So we got that beautiful factory for £2,000. And
did that include the houses as well?
The whole lot.
So that was 2 houses plus...
No, I'm sorry, I'm telling a lie. That the 2 houses, I think, were about £800 each. So that was reasonable. There's our eldest boy, that was James, in those days. But this is wide open spaces, I tell you. And the terrain was only negotiable. This is an aerial view of the track, because I had a Cobra, actually an ex-gliding club pilot that I knew very well and had used, but he flew all over this first before we sort of had to operate on it. And where we drove the tracks up, they refer to it as the Von Valley. And this is at the other end, you go down a hill, and I mean a valley hill. At the bottom there's a wee creek, and the gravel on it was that size. It was quite big.
Now, your family often famously say when things start to get tricky, you start whistling. Were you whistling at any stage during this drive?
Well, I was whistling the whole way from the Manapouri Road into it. There was no bridge over this creek. You had to just ford it. So ford it we did. And but once you were over the bridge, the council had been in there and had made a jolly road. It was a beautiful fine day, evidently, by the look of the clothing we were wearing. But this is where I had the steering wheel ripped out of my hand when I hit a boulder. And this was pretty jolly tricky, I tell you. Yeah, right there. Poor old trucks, they get hell.
Did you have power steering?
Oh yes, there's power steering, all right. Those lugs on the back of the deck of the truck is where we could fit our skids into various widths of the various tanks we were carting.
So what sort of size tanks did you produce?
5,500 gallons. It was the biggest tanks we made to transport. This is our plane, and here's the ex-gliding club tow pilot.
And is he on the track now that you're driving on? Is that right?
He's flying along the track.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. So I know it was very, very handy to know Garth. Garth Boniface was his name. Uh, he's still alive and well.
And so you were a glider pilot. How long ago how long were you a glider pilot?
Oh, I was in there for about, 8 or 10 years. Actually, I carted all of the gliding club buildings from Queenstown down to Five Rivers. I said to my brother, I said, hey, listen, there's 2 bunkhouses and a club room at Queenstown, and the boys bought this stuff for a good price, and I said, once some trucks there to come and give us a hand. He said, yeah, right. So we took the trailer as well and took the whole lot in one swipe down to Five Rivers. And one of the boys was a builder. I had a builder, electrician, and radio blokes. all very necessary for a gliding club, and we were able to do the whole lot ourselves. And of course, with the buildings, there was 2 bunkhouses and the club rooms, and we set the whole thing up, which was rather marvellous. And since that has all been disbanded, and the farm was sold, and it no longer exists, which was rather a shame.
So this is you now at the other end, is it, where the tanks are?
This is where we come across to.
And so what is the station called?
Walter Peak Station. This is, and you see, at the other side, we put planks underneath them, the nose, and put a roller underneath, and just pull them out of the water.
So when you say a roller, what do you mean by a roller?
2-inch pipe.
That's it, just a 2-inch pipe?
2-inch pipe, yeah. That's one winch there. And they were driven through the gearbox of the truck with a power takeoff,
yep,
shall I say. This is the track up to the site where we unloaded them. Whoops.
It looks a bit narrow, TJ.
Yes, it was. Yes, we did some stupid things, I suppose, in those days. And I guess I would go and do it again, quite easy. But experience is a wonderful teacher. And of course, the moment we got over there, we took the blade off the other truck and put it on the machine. And I was able to level the light off. And then I finished up pushing Dave up the track where we had to go. Because old B4 was a great machine, and this is where I just get in behind him and give him one up the rear.
Good grief.
Yeah.
So how did you learn to make these concrete water tanks?
Well, I left home on the 9th of January 1947 and gave a chap a hand to build a tank in our district for the county council.
So the district was?
Up in the Kiwatia County. It's, well, we were 20 miles south of Taihape, and that area there. And it was mainly in Fielding. That's where my boss had this business. But
And he showed you how to make the tanks, did he?
And I learned, his son came up and he boarded with my mum and dad while he did this job, and he said, "Oh, hey, would you give us a hand, Tom?" I said, "Yes, I'd love to." So I worked with him the whole time and learned how to do it. And when they went back to Fielding, I went with him, and I worked with him for 4 years. And we built from 250 gallons up to 15,000 gallons, and a wonderful experience. And of course, I was brand new to the game and very, very keen to learn. And so, in 1950, we did a job up in Stratford. We lined a road tunnel with gunite that's sprayed concrete. And that district put my 21st on for me. There's our pilot, Garth Boniface. They put my 21st party on for me in the Taranaki district. And that was rather wonderful. We got joined in everything that was going on, and ping pong and indoor bowls and music and dancing and God knows what, just down there. So we employed 2 people, a chap and his son, Cowcocky, and that's pulling the winch gear back into gear. And anyway...
So they taught you how to plaster and
oh,
create
yes,
the tanks?
Yes, yes.
But the innovations of getting them across water and the pipe where you're winching them down, was this their innovation, or was these ideas?
No, this all, we did that ourselves.
All right.
And you learned as you went along. That's a bit tough going there.
Because you wouldn't have had HIABs or any other crane lifting gear or anything?
Never cranes, no. But the idea was wonderful. This is a job we did at Manapouri village. A bunch of tanks had to be put in there. And here's an old joke that had pulled us up from the Southland Ditching Company, Sam Earle. But it was just wonderful to have a crawler tractor on hand.
The only ones making water tanks back then?
Oh no, there was a firm in Invercargill, Pneumatic Concreters, they were there.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't bother them and they didn't bother us.
So you would tender for various different contracts, and so this
Yes,
was...
we did an enormous amount of work for the land surveys. You might say that they put us on our feet because you tender for that. And it's a little fishy, I suppose, in a way. But we would tender and ask the blokes at the land surveys how much. And he said, well, you have to do better than that. So we'd knock $10 off the price and we'd get the contract, which was a bit cheeky, I suppose. But it worked, and we sort of never ever looked back, because you'd send out a bill for, say, 6 or 8 tanks and you get the cheque. And you're able to do business when you got paid regular, although the farmers in the district, they were very, very good. Oh, you're new here, how much do we owe you? Now that gives you such an enormous lift. And, you know, you want to buy gear and employ people. This is putting this, must have been a bit dirty, that see how fit we were. Although that was my brother. The old wind-up jack, timber jack.
So that was lifting the tank so as to get it on an angle to go down the slope?
No, we put a roller under, see?
Oh, right, yep.
There goes the roller.
So what sort of price would the tanks be sold for in 1968?
About £120.
Right.
See, there you are.
And it just falls off into place?
It just, yep.
So you and your brother worked together, and you worked as a good partnership, obviously.
Yes, we got on very well, Dave and I.
And so how far and wide are your tanks?
11 for 6 wide. We're about 22.5 inches over either side of the truck.
And how far in terms of Southland? Did you go into Otago or anywhere
Oh
else?
yes, I took stuff up to Haast one time, and Tyree Mouth, that's north of Dunedin, and over the hill from Milton. There's the Manapouri stream.
Right.
It was all very interesting work, and everywhere you went you were sort of recognised as being, oh, you're the guy from Winton, which was good, and did a good job. That was the main thing. I took a job up to Waikato one time to a brand new wool shed and yards, and this young fellow who's noted as being a bit of a loudmouth, and I drove in there one day and with this 5,000 gallon tank on, and walked in and had a look where it had to go, and the ground was not too good, and there was a chap with a D4 there waiting to do some ploughing. So he was going to pull me in, and then the chap pulled me in, and I checked out where it was to go and backed up and unloaded. And he said, oh, come on, I thought you'd be finished by now. I said, take your time. So I took the time, 4.5 minutes to unload. So I said, there's your tank. He said, oh, hell, he said, come and have a feed before you go home. And that was it.